This episode is not about why you should travel in your 20s. This episode is about why you absolutely need to travel in your 20s. And I know that sounds harsh, and I know it sounds intense, and I know it sounds a little white girl privilege of me, but let me explain. Let me start off by saying, not everyone is cut out for traveling. Not everybody wants to travel, and I understand that, okay? To each their own, everybody's different. If every single person had the strongest desire to travel, well, the world probably wouldn't work that well. Actually, it would in certain ways, but if everyone was just traveling all the time, it probably wouldn't. Not everyone can do it, okay? It's not made for everybody, and not everyone has that strong desire to see the world. And while I understand that each person is different, it is very difficult for me to kind of grasp that concept, just because it's something that's like so ingrained inside of me, like this desire to just like get out and like see things and like understand the way that the world works from a different perspective than I was raised with. So it's really hard for me to like even conceptualize that other people just aren't like that. But hello, the way the world works is that everybody's different, so I understand. Maybe traveling isn't your thing, but have you ever traveled before? And I don't mean going on like a family vacation with your family when you were like 16, getting dragged around to the different like tourist spots. I don't even mean like going for a little camping trip. I mean like, have you really traveled? And there's so many different types of traveling, so I don't want to like undermine any of them, because going on a camping trip and going on a family vacation, those are forms of travel, right? Like those are definitely 100% forms of travel. I'm not trying to say that they're not. But there is there's a huge difference between going on a vacation with your family, going on a camping trip, you know, a couple hours outside of your hometown where you were born and raised, or even going on a, you know, trip with your friends to a resort in Mexico. That is very different from, those things are vastly different from somebody doing a solo backpacking excursion around Europe, or someone's cycling across India for an entire year, or I don't know, just quitting your job and traveling from place to place for an indefinite amount of time. They're different, right? And again, everyone likes their own form of traveling. If going on a vacation to like a resort is your form of traveling, that's fine. Do I think it's going to give you the exact same experience that you're going to get from, you know, living the backpacker hostel life? No. But again, I understand that that's not for everyone. The thing is though, even if traveling isn't one of your top priorities, even if you've never even considered it, it's never even crossed your mind to travel. Even when you see videos of what other places look like, you don't think to yourself, I'd like to go there. I still wholeheartedly believe that every single person needs to travel and experience it. Because for one, if you've never done it before, how do you even know that it's not for you? How do you know that you wouldn't like it? Traveling opens up yourself and your mind in so many different ways that you simply cannot understand what it's like until you go. I already know I'm coming off as like, I don't know, just like hippy dippy white privilege type person, like everybody needs to travel, it's life-changing. But like, as cliche as it sounds, like it genuinely is. And I don't mean to be on my high horse and be like, if you don't travel, like, shame on you, because I understand everyone's in a different position, but I'm here to make the case as to why you should travel in your 20s especially, why you shouldn't wait until you're older if it's something you really want to do, and why, even if you don't want to, you should anyways. I've always been an advocate for getting outside of your comfort zone, and traveling is, if there's no better way and example of getting outside of your comfort zone than traveling. Traveling's uncomfortable because you're going somewhere you've never been before, somewhere completely unknown to you, where the languages might be different, the cultures are different, the time zone is different, the weather is different, the landscape is different. Everything about your life that you've come to know is entirely different in other parts of the world. Entirely different. Like, it's mind-boggling when you go somewhere else, somewhere you've only heard about or seen on like movies or TV shows, and you're actually in it and you're like, wow, I can't believe this exists, and it's on the same planet as me. Like, what an honor to live on the same planet as all of these other places and basically have them at our fingertips, especially at this time and age that we live in. It is truly, like, we are so fortunate to be alive right now, where you can literally just buy a plane ticket online, hop on a plane and go literally wherever you want to. except like North Korea, but also why would you want to go there? I think that I've always had a desire to travel. I'm a Sagittarius. I feel like I bring that up in every episode. I'm so sorry if you're sick of me hearing it and using it as a reason as to why I am the way I am, but I am a Sagittarius, okay? And Sagittariuses love to travel. Maybe not all of them. All of the ones I know actually do, which is funny. It's like everyone I've ever met that's a Sagittarius is always like so stereotypically a Sagittarius. And all of, like, I don't have a lot of friends that like to travel, but all of the ones that do are literally all Sagittariuses. So maybe it's saying something, I don't know. Sorry to get all astrological on you once again. But I think that I've always had this curiosity about like what the rest of the world is like, but I don't think I fully like had this strong desire to travel until like 8th grade. And I don't even remember like what sparked it. I can't remember a single instance in which I was like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna travel. I just remember as I got older, I decided that I needed to see other places and that it became so strong, like this desire that was so strong in me that it was like I wasn't gonna let anything get in my way. I was gonna do it one way or another. And let me give you guys a little background. So growing up, I come from a very middle-class family, but you know, we always had food on the table and had a nice house and had everything that I could possibly ever need. I had a great childhood, but we never had extra money to go on like family vacations. And I mean like family vacations like to other countries or like staying in hotels. Our family vacations were road trips and camping trips. And I have to say I'm forever, ever grateful for that, because just camping trips and going on those road trips, first of all, instilled in me like such a strong passion and love for nature and just like being outdoors. Like I love going camping so much. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And I also love road trips. Like I love sitting in a car. I could sit in a car and look out the window for days. Like I'm not even exaggerating. I actually get like internally upset when the trip comes to an end, like when we finally reach the destination, because I could genuinely look out of a window of a car for so long because I was like raised on road trips. So I'm very grateful for that, but I'm trying to say like I never really had any international travel exposure when I was younger. Never had any going on like the first time I went on a plane was when I was 15, which I know is like still pretty young for a lot of people, but that was the first time I ever left. Well, no, I was still in the United States, so I can't say that. I did go to Mexico when I was like in 3rd grade, but we drove there because we lived in San Diego, so you could just drive across the border. So we drove like 3 hours south to San Felipe. So that was my first time ever going international. That was before you even needed a passport to go to Mexico. And I mean, I was pretty young, so I like don't remember much about it in terms of like culture shock really. I do remember like crossing the border was interesting, but I don't really have much memories from that. So the only international trip that I really had in my what do you call that? Adolescence, I guess, was going to Mexico when I was in 3rd grade. And again, we didn't fly there. But then when we were 15, when I was 15 years old, my 2 older brothers had moved out of the house, and I don't know, I guess my mom had found like this really good kind of like flight deal, I think through like AAA or something, and it was like flights from San Diego to Kauai, which is one of the islands in Hawaii. And she ended up getting tickets for me and my dad and her. And so we ended up going. I actually had to take like the first week off of my sophomore year in high school to go to Hawaii, because that was when the cheapest flights was like in September, once like summer was already over. So she got this deal. And the thing about my dad is he is petrified of flying. Like you cannot get this man on a plane if you tried. You would have to hit him over the head with a frying pan and knock him unconscious to get this man on a plane. He's terrified of flying. And I think that there's a lot of people like that. So I think he did have to get prescribed Xanax from his doctor to go on the plane. But he did it, he made it. It was a 6-hour flight, and he said once he got there, the entire time he was just thinking about that he's gonna have to get on a flight back. So I guess that wasn't he still had a good time in Hawaii, but the flight was not fun for him. So I think that was a huge reason why we didn't go on a lot of flights growing up, is because my dad just like will not get on a plane. So that was kind of a miracle. But that was my first time on a plane, was when I was 15, and I just stared out the window the entire time. I was like in amazement that I was flying. Like it's so weird. I don't know, I just like couldn't stop staring at the ocean and the clouds. It was just like crazy. And I fell in love with Hawaii. Like I literally cried when we had to leave, and I don't know if that was like the first, I think I already had the travel bug at that point, because I do remember like going through, there was like this catalog that I had gotten like in the mail or something, and it was basically about like exchange tourism for high school students. So I think it was like you could take like either spring break or like summer break and take a few weeks, and you could pick all these different locations. They were like the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, like maybe Mexico, El Salvador, like all these different like kind of tropical places. And you could pick like a thing that you wanted to volunteer in. So of course for me, I chose like, I wanted to pick like the animal ones, like rescuing sea turtles or like building habitats for stray dogs, like things like that. And I just remember I would like literally beg my parents, like I would look through the catalog all the time. I was like, oh my God, like just envisioning what it would be like to like go to these other places. But of course we didn't have the money to do it. My parents couldn't afford it. So I never got to do that, but that's okay. I just remember like I did really have this strong desire to travel. And so yeah, that just kind of manifested into this kind of obsession actually with traveling. For some really weird reason, I got hooked on Australia. I don't know why, but when I was like 16 years old, I was like madly obsessed with Australia, and like I like wanted to live there so bad, and I don't really know why. I followed all of these like random Australian people on Instagram, like not even like famous people, just like I found all these random people that lived in Byron Bay and was like following them. I do have to brag, Ziggy Alberts did follow me back when I was 16, which I don't think was weird. I think he was only like a year older than me or something. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I had a weird obsession with Australia, and I was like, as soon as I graduate high school, I'm going to Australia. That was what my plan was. And a lot of you know that I did, but I actually went to New Zealand first. So this whole thing started, I think, like my senior year of high school. I already knew right away when I graduated I was going to go travel. And yes, there was college kind of in the back of my head, but it was more because I felt like I had to go, and I felt like my parents wanted me to go. I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I had no idea what I was going to get a degree in. My mom and I took a trip up the coast of California and stopped at a bunch of different schools over spring break, like my junior year of high school, to like look at all the schools, tour them, figure out where I wanted to go. And I just remember every single campus I walked into, I was like, there's just absolutely no way I can see myself here. Like, it just didn't feel right. Like, nothing felt right about it. I just couldn't picture myself doing it. And I had no strong desire. And it's like every single campus we went to, I felt more and more distance from my future self attending college. It didn't feel like it was for me. The only campus I could actually see myself on was Santa Cruz, just because it's like in the middle of a forest and it doesn't even feel like a college. But even then, I was just like, I don't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go traveling. And I actually had a friend who he had done an exchange to New Zealand in like either like sophomore or junior year of high school, maybe senior year actually, I don't remember. He did like a semester in New Zealand, and he lived with like a family. And so he was actually like, after he came back for like senior year, and then he graduated, and then he went back to New Zealand for a little bit. And so because I already knew someone that was in New Zealand, and like he kind of already knew about it, I was like, okay, well maybe I'll just go to New Zealand first, since I already know someone there, and like I can meet him there and he can kind of show me around, and then I'll figure it out from there. So that's why I picked New Zealand. So basically my senior year of high school, I was doing like all honors, AP, IB, the whole thing, hating school, hating every single moment of it, by the way, but doing it anyways. So I guess I could go to college, even though I never did. Such a waste of time, but it's okay, whatever. And I actually had started my YouTube channel at that point. So that's when I had started my social media, was in high school. And I was making like, I think about $200 a month on my YouTube channel, which obviously isn't very much money, but when you're living at home, not having to pay rent and not having to pay for much, like I was pretty much just paying like my gas, phone bill, and like some of my own groceries, nothing really more than that. So I could, you know, afford to save quite a bit of money, $200 a month from that. Plus, I had a part-time job at Veggie Grill, if you guys are familiar. It's like a vegan casual dining chain in, I know it's at least in California. I don't know if they have them in other states, but I was working at basically like a restaurant. I was actually working in the back like a line cook and a dishwasher, which was a very interesting experience, pretty fun. And so I was able to save a lot of money. I mean, not a lot. I had about like $5,000, I think, saved by the end of the year. So I did graduate in like, I don't know, end of May, beginning of June, my senior year, and I actually didn't go traveling. I booked my ticket for New Zealand for February of the following year. The seasons are opposite because it's the southern hemisphere, so if I were to have left right then and there, I would have been going in the winter time. Although I probably should have gone earlier. I'm not entirely sure why I picked February. I think probably the flights were cheaper, that's probably it. But anyways, I ended up buying a one-way ticket to New Zealand, which I found upon arrival at the airport that you can't do because you can't enter New Zealand without a flight exiting, a proof that you're going to leave the country. They want to make sure people can't stay there. You can't really buy one-way tickets to most countries. I had no idea because I'd never been on an international flight. I'd never flown by myself before. It was my second time going on an airplane. I didn't know anything. Like I didn't know about checked luggage. So I ended up going to New Zealand. I bought this one way, and then immediately in the airport I had to like quickly buy a random ticket to Australia so that I could just have proof so they would let me on the plane. So I fly to New Zealand, and obviously like it's my second time on a plane ever, first time by myself. I only brought a carry-on bag, and it was like a tiny suitcase. It was a Jessica Simpson suitcase, so random. Like I wanted it because it was floral and pretty, but it was tiny. And also I had this idea, I think I had booked my flight to Australia like out of New Zealand like 3 weeks later. So I was planning on being in New Zealand only for 3 weeks. And then I was supposed to go to Australia, and I actually had other friends that were in there at that time. So we kind of made this like random plan, like, oh yeah, like we'll meet in Australia. I had no idea what I was doing, guys. I did not book any accommodation. I had booked nothing in New Zealand. All I booked was a flight. No accommodation. My friend who lived there had arranged, like he was gonna pick me up from the airport. But I thought that he had a flat in New Zealand still, so I was kind of assuming like I would sleep on his couch or like, just like crash at his place because he had a flat with like friends or like roommates. And I guess he had actually moved out like a week prior. He had no money left, and he was literally living in his car in the middle of the city. I flew into Wellington. So I landed in Wellington, and this is the thing. I had this image of myself traveling and getting off the plane, and that it was going to be like this majestic, amazing, whimsical experience. But I got off the plane, and if you've ever been to Wellington before, you know that the weather is 99% of the time just absolute trash. It's windy, rainy, gloomy. It's not like the most pleasant of environments. The city itself is cool, but weather-wise, garbage. And so I land, and of course it's a classic, it's a classic Wellington day. It's blustering winds, I think. Blustering? I don't know. Blustering. Something. Just gusty winds. It's raining. It's so dreary and like dull and gray and dark. And my friend picks me up, and we're driving through the city, and it just looks like any other city. Well, not any other city. It was definitely different. First of all, we're driving on the other side of the road. So I was like still very intrigued and curious. I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm in New Zealand. It didn't feel real until I actually landed, even when I was on the plane, because I had thought about it so much that it had only existed in my head, and then all of a sudden I was actually doing it, and I was actually living this like thing that was in my head. It was like real life coming, it was just like a dream coming to life, unfolding before me. And so we're just like driving through the city. We went to the library for me to try to look up places to like sleep that night. I was like looking on Airbnbs, and obviously there's hostels everywhere. I don't think I even knew I must have known what a hostel was. I don't even know, you guys, like I didn't know anything about traveling at all. Like I didn't know when we landed. I had a layover in Auckland, except it was like a really, really short layover, and I didn't even have time. Like I had, like when you have to transfer your own bags, a lot of the time they'll transfer them for you. This was not that case. You had to grab your bag and transfer it. The people who were sitting next to me on the plane basically had to help me, because I didn't know like you have to like scan your passport and go through customs because you're landing in an international country. I'd never done that before. I had no idea. And I was sprinting through, oh my God, because they had like the international and the domestic airport. So I had to go from international to domestic, and it's a long travel if you've ever been to the Auckland airport. I was sprinting, and I had worn these like high-heeled boots and this huge jacket because they wouldn't fit in my carry-on. So I was like dressed in the most ridiculous outfit, like airplane outfit ever, especially for like a 14-hour flight or whatever I was on. Again, I had no idea. And so I was like sprinting. I had to bring my own bag. I had no idea where anything was. I didn't know like gates, terminals. Like you guys have to understand, I was so ignorant to just how airports work. I don't even know how I did it. But anyways, I got on my flight, thank God. But I do remember like we couldn't find any accommodation because there actually happened to be a not Red Hot Chili, Guns N' Roses concert in Wellington that night, and a lot of bands don't hit Wellington very often, so when like a big band plays in Wellington, it's like, a big deal, because they always skip Wellington, they always go to Auckland, and then usually like Christchurch to hit the South Island. So Guns N' Roses was playing in Wellington that night, or that weekend. So all the hostels and all the hotels were basically like booked up. We even asked this hostel, and they didn't have any spots that night. So me and my friend literally slept in the back of his car that first night in Wellington, and I remember thinking we didn't have blankets, pillows, like we were raw dogging the back of my friend's car, and I was still in the clothes that I'd worn on the airplane. Like I slept in my giant like 70s leather coat and I didn't sleep in my boots, but like there were like crumbs in the back of his car, and it was like a shitty old car. And it's also illegal. Like, you can't sleep in your car in the city, and also where we were parked, it was illegal. We hadn't paid for parking. I'm telling you right now, my friend had like 30 cents to his name when I got there. And in the morning, we got woken up to a man giving us a ticket and kicking us out of the car. So we were just stranded in the city with our suitcases. My friend sold his car like 5 minutes later. I'm not even kidding. This sounds like a joke. He sold his car, so we're like literally stranded, and then we went back to the hostel that we had asked the day before if they had any availability, because I think the guy had told us, oh, I think like there's space tomorrow. So we took our suitcases and walked up the hill to this hostel, and they actually only had a tent space outside. My friend had a tent, but it was pouring rain that night, and the tent flooded, and so I ended up sleeping in the movie room in the hostel. And anyways, long story short, I ended up staying in this hostel for like 2 months, I think, and it was like the grimiest hostel in the entire world. It was like a co-ed, bedrooms, like gross, but it was so fun. Like, everyone at the hostel was like best friends, because everyone was like very long term there. I met a guy while I was there, and we ended up dating. He was from Scotland, and so that kind of like took me on this big course, because like, remember, my original plan was to be in New Zealand for like 3 weeks. Well, I met this guy, and he basically like begged me to stay. And you know, I'm like this young 19-year-old, just like la-di-da, like had zero plans of what I was doing with my life. And so I ended up applying for a working holiday visa and staying in New Zealand with him for like 2 months in this hostel. And then we decided to buy a van. We bought a van for $1,800, so $900 each. And we ended up living in this van and traveling around the entire country of New Zealand for a couple of months, which was super fun. And then we went to Australia, and we lived in Australia for a year on a working holiday visa. A lot of you guys already know this. I don't want to get into this entire story, because anyways, point being, that is like probably the highlight of my life. Was literally just, that was like the definition of living on a whim, for real. Like, I literally just went. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was the time of my life. And my plans changed so many times. Like, you think if someone would have told me like, oh, you're gonna meet this random guy from Scotland and you're gonna live in a van with him and travel around New Zealand for months, I would have been like, what are you talking about? I'm leaving in 3 weeks from New Zealand. Like, it was actually crazy. And I think that's why you really need to like keep your plans just completely flexible. Obviously, book accommodation, don't be dumb like me. But hey, it's still a fun life story. I just feel like when I was 19, I was like the most carefree ever, and I had the most fun ever, because I just, like, things would happen to me and I was like, okay, I guess we're doing that now. Like, no questions asked. I'm down, I'm up, let's do it. Let's do it. Anyways, sorry, I kind of wanted to give that little spiel, and that was kind of my only solo traveling experience. Obviously, I did have a friend there, and then I met people, but like, I was, you know, living in this hostel by myself. My friend ended up leaving after like a week, so I didn't have him anymore. Obviously, I met that guy, but it's like, I didn't really know him. I was basically living by myself, didn't really know what I was doing. I wasn't in my 20s, but I was 19. I did turn 20 when I was living in Australia, and like, I did that before college. I don't know, like, I know that it's really, I was supposed to be taking a gap year, but I ended up just never going. So I don't really know how the college system works, like how long you can actually take between graduating and then like going to college. Is there like a limit? I have no idea. I mean, there has to be a limit, right? Whether or not you are planning on going to college, or you want to travel after college or before college, it's totally, you know, personal. It just depends on like what makes more sense for you. But here's the thing. Life is short, time is fleeting, and you're not guaranteed basically any second of your life at all. It's a blessing we're even here to begin with. I think that your 20s are the best time to travel, because it is the most carefree you're ever going to be. It's going to be the time when you have the least amount to lose and the most amount of learning and experiences to gain. We are almost like, when you're like fresh out of college or fresh out of high school, you are almost like a clean slate. You do have like that experience from that, you know, time of your life, but it's like, the world is literally your oyster. And I really, really, really hate the socially accepted kind of life that we've created. That is, go to school, go to college, get a degree, get a career with that said degree, meet somebody, get married, have kids, settle down, and then once your kids have flown the nest and are now in college doing that whole cycle all over again, now when you're 65 and you're retired, go travel. Like, who are we kidding? For one thing, you don't even know if you're gonna live that long. Another thing, you could get health issues, you could have injuries, you are not going to be as young and spry as you were before. You're probably going to be going on like a lame cruise, not that, you know, I don't know, I don't want to look down on cruises, but you know, like old people kind of traveling where you're like going in like a tour guides and stuff. It's like, You will never have that same experience. Like, that is so vastly different from being in your 20s and like going from hostel to hostel and just like bumming it. They're not the same thing. And again, you might not make it to 65. You might get cancer. I mean, I hope to God you don't, but you don't ever know what's gonna happen. You could get hit by a bus. Anything could happen to you. You have no idea what will happen. And also just like, when you're 65, don't you wanna just like chill out? Do you really wanna be bouncing around? I mean, I probably would be, but like, you know what I mean? Like, there's literally no better time. I feel like I need to just yell it to the earth, because I just feel like there's so many people in my life that I'm like, and I get like not everyone wants to travel. It's hard for me to understand, and so that's why I feel like I need to scream at everyone and be like, go, travel, do it, like literally do it. I also feel like the more time that you let pass, this goes for literally anything, but the more time that you allow it to pass before acting on something, the less likely you are to actually do it. And I feel like this goes for anything, like starting a diet or like starting to work out or starting to write a book. Like, the longer you put it off, the harder it's going to be to actually do it. So just say fuck it and go. I've never done the like college exchange, or like, what do you call that, studying abroad, but I feel like that's not the full travel experience. And I've never done it, so I can't say from experience, but I just feel like traveling, like studying abroad is one thing because you're with like your friends from college, right? And also, aren't you like studying, like living with them? Like, I feel like you're just around a bunch of Americans. I feel like studying abroad makes more sense. I don't really know. I think you should still travel, even if you've already done studying abroad. I think you still need like a different type of traveling experience, but I don't really know. Wait, if you want to wait until after college to travel, that's fine, but do not wait until you already have a career, because I swear once you have a career, you are going to get so locked into that career. It's going to be so hard for you to leave, unless your career is like very remote and they're totally fine with you working abroad and stuff. That's fine, but I honestly think like you should experience travel when you don't have a job. Just save some money. Go for a little bit. It doesn't have to be a long time. It doesn't have to be like, you know, a year-long trip anywhere. It doesn't need to be intense or extreme. Just go somewhere. You absolutely do not want to wait until you have a family or you're married or you are settled down or you bought a house. Like, do it now. Now is literally the time. There is no other time. I'm telling you, like, and that's not to say people with families can't travel or like you can't travel once you're retired. You can, you absolutely can, but it's not going to be the same. You're not going to have the same experience. It's not going to be as eye-opening or as just, I don't know. Ugh. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, I would love to travel, but I just can't afford it. Traveling is expensive. I am here to tell you that it's not. And everyone's in a different financial situation. And I feel like a lot of us in our 20s are like struggling, especially with this economy, like just trying to buy a house and juggle all of our bills and just like how expensive everything is. I get it. I literally understand. And I know it sounds like so privileged for me to be like, anyone can afford to travel. Not everyone. I get it. Like, if you're like literally in the tightest possible like financial crunch of your life, like, you got to do what you got to do to survive. Okay. Like, make sure your needs are met first. Traveling is definitely a luxury, but it's not an expensive luxury. You know what I mean? So traveling does cost money, but I want to let you guys know that it's not as much money as you think, depending on where you go. I don't know why I picked New Zealand and Australia, because those are like literally the most expensive countries. And hey, I still did it. And I hate when people, whenever I talk about this, people are like, oh my God, well, you have rich parents. My parents did not give me any money. I actually had to call my mom from New Zealand and ask her to like, I didn't have a piggy bank, but I had like this big plastic baggie full of coins that I just, you know when you like collect loose change, you just keep it. I had to call my mom and be like, hey, can you like deposit those coins in my bank account? It was like $98, which luckily for me, the the new US to New Zealand dollar exchange rate was great. It was definitely in my favor. I was still making my YouTube money, but like, again, it wasn't very much. It was good for like backpacking money, but I was living like, I was scraping by in New Zealand because I didn't want to spend all my money. But I did get a working holiday visa, which those exist. Just to let you guys know, in a lot of countries, you can get working holiday visas. Australia and New Zealand have them. You can work there legally. So if you want to work and travel abroad, that is definitely an option. You should definitely look into it, because I actually worked while I lived in Australia. So I was like actually working there, paying my taxes, like had a whole bank account there, literally was renting a place. Like, I was like living there. So it's definitely a thing. You can do that. I didn't end up working in New Zealand just because I ended up traveling and I was only there for like 5 months total. So I never ended up getting a job, but that is a thing. But yeah, I was scraping by, like New Zealand is not a cheap country at all, especially for someone who's like a backpacker, a 19-year-old who had $5,000 to her name and like wasn't really making much money. That money can go really fast. So I was like definitely buying the cheapest things. I wasn't eating very healthy because fruit and vegetables in New Zealand are expensive. So advice, if you want to go somewhere that's not expensive, definitely don't go to New Zealand and Australia. They are beautiful and amazing countries, and I highly recommend checking them out at least once in your life, but maybe do it when you have some more money. That isn't to say you can't do it cheaply, because I did and a lot of other people do, so you can, but it's not going to be the cheapest, and you're going to probably not be living the most luxurious of lifestyles. If you really want cheap, like go to Southeast Asia. Right now I'm in Mexico. It's pretty cheap. Latin America, South America, Central America, cheap, usually pretty cheap. Even I've heard like a lot of European countries are, not like Switzerland or the Netherlands, but a lot of other countries are. Never been, couldn't tell you. I've only been to the UK, which I don't know if that counts. I guess it's kind of Europe, but like it's like the fish and chips Europe. It's not like the pasta and olive oil Europe, you know what I mean? There's options, right? Like, yeah, the flight might be expensive, but once you're there, it's like dirt cheap. You can live off of like $1,000 in like Southeast Asia for like months at a time if you really like budget it well. I mean, when I was in Bali, I don't know how it is now, but when I was in Bali, the most amount of money you could take out at a time at an ATM was 1 million Balinese, I forget what it's called, rupees? I forget what, Indonesian IROs. I don't remember what the money's called. I think it's Indonesian rupiahs. The most amount of money you could take out an ATM at a time was 1 million Indonesian, whatever they're called. That was $100 US. That was maxing out the ATM machine, was $100 US, and that would last you so much. I was eating at this vegan buffet, all you can eat buffet, $3 US. I was eating there like every single day. All of the accommodation was like, I don't know, between like $11 and $16 a night. And that was split between 2 people, I think, because I was with my boyfriend at the time. So I'm here to tell you, there are very cheap places in the world. Maybe the flight will be expensive, but like save a little money and you can do it. We all make priorities. We all spend our money on things that we find and deem important. Some of us spend money on getting our nails done, our hair done. Some of us spend our money on having a nice car, or spending money on college too, like education, or spending money on going out to eat. There are things and ways in which you can, stop spending money and budget if you really want to save money to go. I fully believe that if there's a will, there is a way. Like if you want something so badly, you will find a way to do it. And I understand there's privilege and everyone comes from different backgrounds and it's more difficult for some people and easier for other people, but I still don't believe in like using where you come from as an entire excuse to dictate your life. Like if there is something you want to do, you can find a way to do it, especially in this day and age. Like there's so many different ways to make money. And yes, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy, but things that you really, really want should not just come easy to you, and they're not going to. And the only way you're going to grow is if you get outside your comfort zone. And you're not going to get outside your comfort zone if you live in your hometown your whole life and you never leave the little bubble. Also, here's the thing. Like I said, there's different types of traveling. While I do think that it's very important to leave your home country at least once in your life, especially for all my fellow Americans out there, get the hell out of the USA. Because we grow up pledging our allegiance to the flag, which, guys, I'm sorry. I'm like the least patriotic person ever. Sue me. It's almost 4th of, oh my God, wait, I forgot this episode's coming out the day before 4th of July. Well, I have some things to say. No, we're not even going to get into it, but, I don't know. I'm just going to say I'm not very patriotic, okay? And my fellow Americans, you need to get the hell out of the United States. I mean, you don't need to move out, okay? Not to be dramatic, but you need to get out of it. If you've never left the country, if you've never left the United States, honey, you have not lived. And I don't mean to be dramatic, but like we grow up, if you're not American and you're listening, let me just paint the picture. And I'm sure you've grown up in kind of a similar way, but it's not going to be as intense as the United States. You grow up from the ripe young age of like 4, as soon as you enter kindergarten, saying the Pledge of Allegiance, learning the national anthem, singing the little songs. And the Pledge of Allegiance itself is like very questionable, just like, I don't know, it's very culty. It seems like a cult. But you grow up with people telling you, and you wholeheartedly believe it, that the United States is the greatest nation on earth. It's the only nation on earth. It's the best nation. Why would you ever want to leave? This is the best place on earth. Like you could never possibly find somewhere better. You will not understand why that is not true until you leave. And yes, there are issues in other countries. We are very lucky to come from the United States. Like, there are so many amazing opportunities here, and like whatever, blah blah blah. You guys get it. Yeah. Grateful, whatever. But like, there is a whole world out there, my friends. The United States is big, okay? Like, definitely explore the United States a little bit, but like, the world is a big place. The world is even bigger. The United States is big, but it's also just a little dot on a map. Like, there's more to it, to the world and to life, than the United States. There's so much more out there. There's so many different types of ways of living and cultures and languages and people. And like, you just simply cannot open your mind if you don't leave. Like, I'm telling you right now, you need to get out of the country. Go to Mexico or Canada. They're not even that far away. It doesn't matter. Just go somewhere new. Get out of the little bubble that is the United States. If you can't, or you don't want to, or maybe you don't have the time or the money or whatever it is that's holding you back, or if you haven't really traveled and you just want to experience it a little bit, just go on a little trip by yourself or with people. It doesn't need to be out of the country if you don't want it to be. If you just want a little taste, go backpacking for like a week somewhere. Go camping. Go on a little road trip. Just go somewhere for the weekend. Just go somewhere different that you've never been before. Just do it. When I was 18 years old, before I went to New Zealand, I did a solo camping trip in Big Sur. Actually vlogged it, if you guys remember that on YouTube. And I just booked a camping spot and drove myself up there. I was singing Bob Dylan up the way. I remember I cried when I got to the coast because it was at sunset and it was so beautiful. I slept in the back of my car. Even though I brought a tent because I got there in the pitch dark. I don't know. I was there for like 2 days. Just like wandering, driving around the coast. Like, it was so fun. It was so fun to just be by myself and understand and realize that, like, wow, I can just do whatever I want. Like, I can just get in my car and drive somewhere and go somewhere and see something new and be somewhere and camp. Like, it's like so freeing when you have that realization that like you literally can just do that. You can go anywhere. You can buy a plane ticket. You see somewhere on a map that you want to go to, you could literally buy a ticket there. Like, you can literally do that. It's actually crazy. The world is at your fingertips. It's wild. Another thing is that there's so many ways to travel for free or for travel for cheap. There are, obviously, hostels are cheaper. That's like the cheap accommodation. You can find hostels that are really cheap. You're sharing a room with like 6 other strangers, but it's like such an experience. I highly recommend. You have to stay in a hostel at least once. It's so interesting. You'll meet so many cool people. It's so much fun. Everyone needs to experience hostel life. There's World Packers, which is like a volunteer. I think you exchange, like, you dedicate like volunteer hours, and in exchange you get accommodation. There's so many opportunities like that where like you can like woof, which is where you work on a farm for free accommodation, like a lot of times free food. Like so many like volunteerism. You can exchange your work in exchange for free accommodation. Don't ask me because I've never done it, but like go on TikTok and look it up. There's like so many videos, or like join a Facebook group, join like a forum, go on Reddit. Like, there's so much out there and like so much information. But I will tell you, you can read up about traveling as much as you want. You can watch as many videos as you want. Because when I went traveling in New Zealand and Australia, I had people asking me questions all the time. Like, oh my God, how did you do that? Like, I really want to travel. Like, where did you stay? Like, how much did it cost? Like, what did you do? And it's like, girl, I had no idea. I just went. I just bought a ticket and went. I didn't know any more than you did until I went, and now I do. But like, you're never going to know. Like, yeah, you can research and like you'll get the gist of it, but like you will genuinely never understand until you actually just get out there and go. And you can try to have it all planned and try to have it all organized and try to figure it all out before you go, but like once you go, it's gonna change. Your plans are gonna change, things are gonna happen. Like, traveling's not as glamorous as people make it seem. There are always things that go wrong. Like, I don't know, your luggage gets lost, your flights get missed, the car breaks down. Like, there's always going to be something, but it's okay. It's just part of the experience. It's part of the journey, and it's part of the fun, honestly. I think if it's something you really want to do, you'll figure out a way to do it. And I'm telling you right now, now is the time. You are in your 20s. You are ripe. You are at a ripe age, my friends. You are at the prime of your lives. This is the time to go. I don't care if I'm being annoying, if I sound obnoxious, or if I don't care what I sound like. Because I know what I'm saying is the truth. You gotta go traveling. You got to do it, even if you don't want to, even if you think you'll hate it. Just do it anyways. Also go solo traveling if you can. And there's so many women and girls that I know that have gone solo traveling. I went, I was safe, it was fine. A lot of people do it, and I think it's the best way to meet new people. It's the best way to learn about yourself. Like, truly, you will not know yourself until you go traveling alone. You'll have to figure out so much stuff on your own, and it's like so character building, honestly. It's so character building. You'll be such a different person by the time you come back. I promise. I know it sounds cliche, but traveling is a life experience that no matter how many classes you take or degrees you get or textbooks you read, you'll never have that same experience. When you go traveling, it's the only way you can experience is the only way you can understand is by going and experiencing it. It's literally like a once in a lifetime experience. And no trip will be the same. They'll all be different. Also, if you go traveling, be super flexible. You can obviously make plans, but don't make them so rigid that you have no way of like changing them, because things will happen. You will meet people and they will swipe the course, like they will change the course of your plans. Maybe you'll go somewhere and you'll like really love it and you actually want to stay longer. Or you like find a job that you really like there, or like are volunteering at some animal shelter and you like want to stay there forever. I don't know, like things happen. You never know. You have to be very open-minded and open and say yes to like literally everything. Just be open to all the opportunities and possibilities. Okay, to wrap this up, James told me a quote that his mom gave him the other day, and it was, "You have to jump in the river to reach the other shore." And I love it because it's so true. You have to jump in the river, and the river is risky. You might drown. That's a little harsh. I don't know. You might get swept away. You might struggle a little bit. There might not be a bridge to get to the other side, but you will not be able to get to the other shore if you do not take the risk and jump into the river. I love that metaphor. I love metaphors. Thanks, James's mom. Anyways, yeah, sorry for yelling at you for like 45 minutes, but hopefully you go traveling after listen to this. I'm traveling right now. I'm in Mexico right now, and it's super fun. James and I literally don't know what we're doing either. Just FYI, like, we're here, and we have like the next week of accommodation and flights booked. Oh my God, there's a gigantic wasp that just flew in here. Are you kidding me? Yeah, we don't really know what we're doing either. We're both working, while we're traveling, and it's possible. We're doing it. We're living our lives, and honestly, it's so much fun, like, not knowing what we're doing. I don't know. I know a lot of people don't like that feeling of like uncertainty, but I love not knowing what I'm doing and what the future is going to hold. Like, I don't know why. It's fun. It's freeing. I feel like anything could happen. Anyways, if this episode did not inspire you to go traveling, then I don't know what will. But I really hope that this did inspire you in some way or another, or maybe now you're just scared because I yelled at you. But love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. My jaw is actually tired from speaking so much. I feel like I was like frothing at the mouth during that entire thing, but you can tell it's just something I'm very passionate about, okay? I want to just shove every single person that I know on a plane and make them go somewhere. That's how fucking passionate I am about it. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, feel free, but don't feel pressured to give it a 5-star rating. And I'll love you forever. And go follow the podcast on Instagram because it's really fun. I've been posting fun stuff on there. I also have a TikTok for the podcast. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast. We have it all. So go follow all of them. Also follow me on Instagram and TikTok if you want to, because it's always a fun time over there. Okay. I need to go leave because I need to like not talk for like 5 hours because my jaw is about to swing off its hinges. I'll see you guys next month. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.